Masha. To begin this introduction, I would like to share a fact about myself. I am the only Jew in my entire grade at school. I know, crazy living in Boston, where the Jewish population is very high. But that hasn't led me to be disgraceful of who I am or hide who I am. I've actually felt more empowered to build connections with people who aren't like me. I have multiple friends who are Muslim. I have multiple friends who come from the Middle East, that's not in Israel, and I cherish those connections. I've learned to put away my personal beliefs and my politics and enforce relations with those who think differently than me, and also embrace their beliefs. And that is exactly what Shahar Azani is trying to do. It is my honor to introduce Shahar Azani, a veteran Israeli diplomat, passionate advocate for Israel, and a prominent voice on Jewish and Middle Eastern issues. Please welcome to the stage, Shahar
Azani! Good morning, Boker Tov. Oh, come off it. Good morning, Boker Tov. Now I can hear you. Thank you so much for that enthusiastic intro. I'm done. That's enough for me. I'm good. This is the best. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be with all of you here on this Shabbat morning. Where is Shabbat Kastenbaum? Is he here? I just want to start because they told me that, they cut away from my 3 hours to speak. So I want to be very concise in how we do this. And let me start by commemorating our good friend, Olga Meshwa. We spoke about this last night. Olga is very much present in our hearts and our minds. I've known Olga for over 20 years, ever since she started her journey. When I met her in Los Angeles with her father, Reverend Kenneth Meshwa, and her late mother, who passed away a couple of years ago. That gem of a personality. And I wanted to share with you 3 minutes from a conversation I had with Olga over 10 years ago, just to inspire us all for just a brief moment. Shall we?
So Olga Mishra, she's the eldest of 3 children, and I spent some time here in the United States while growing up, but a lot of it was back home in South Africa, Johannesburg. I was in legal practice full-time for about 8 years, but I have a passion for young people and a passion for community work, and so even though I'd done well and made partner before the age of 30, I was like, there must be something out there that I feel as if I can lend myself to from a cause perspective. Well, you see, the values of ensuring that truth is represented, the values of ensuring that people get equal opportunities to be able to be who they are and to be who they are proudly, and to ensure that the injustices that we experienced as South Africans, and particularly Black South Africans through apartheid, never happens again, is part of the reason why I actually find myself doing DAISY work. So DAISY stands for Defend, Embrace, Invest in, and Stand by or Support Israel. And its reason for existence is actually to deliberately oppose what the BDS movement is doing. But truth and integrity and hope, and frankly, just real opportunities for everybody is part of the reason as to why I do what I do. We live in a day and age, Shahar, where there's so many challenges, but I do believe that people at their heart of hearts just want to wake up every morning and give the best for their families and have the best opportunities for themselves. So if our governments could be, what are the opportunities that we can create for our people? What are the opportunities that we can create for relations across borders, for relations across different color lines? What are the opportunities that we can ensure exist for the betterment of just society generally? It would be that, and not a case of what's in this for me and I'm just going to take this for me, but more of a relationship and an attitude and a leadership of how can I best serve you? One of the examples that I've learned from my faith is that if you want to be the greatest, you've got to be the servant of all. So governments and leaders that would teach more about servanthood, serving each other, caring for each other, young people that would be about our parents have done so much for us. How can we take their lessons and improve that legacy to create a better future, not always want to be fighting and always wanting to have to prove ourselves? I'd be excited if that could be the case. For me, what's even more satisfying is when I see the enlightenment in people's eyes, when I see how young people are, and even old people are getting opportunities and technology assistance with regards to Israel, how it's changing their health. I'm also seeing the creation of beautiful friendships across color lines, across faith lines. And frankly, Shahar, if I'm to lose a few friends, if I'm to lose popularity for the now, but then be able to sow seeds that are going to germinate within the next 5, 10, 15 years' time, then that's okay. Because then when history tells a story as to peace and stability and greater harmony, not only in the Middle East, but across Africa and the United States, I want to be on the right side of history and still be able to say that I was bold enough to make a stand that was able to actually bear real fruit and real peace and real harmony.
In history, and all of us will continue to carry Olga in our hearts, and her message shall resonate with us because you listen to what she said. To be the greatest, you must be the servant of all. To be the greatest, you must be the servant of all. Izzy mentioned Parshat Shmot, the book of Exodus that we are beginning today on this Shabbat. And when you think about the theme of Shmot, we are acquainted with another reluctant leader, Moshe, who assumes a leadership position even though he feels as if he's unworthy. Today, I am in the presence of leaders, of such heroes. Each and every one of you is a beacon in your communities, in your schools. In the course of the past few years, I've been inspired to see the impact that you've had. You are now not just among peers, but among leaders and ambassadors of the light that will go out there and every day make the world a better place, make your community a better place. Embrace that position. Be who you are. Take that leadership position with passion, with pride, with enthusiasm. Look at the speakers you have. From Colonel Camp, no, I'm just kidding, who stands there on the battlefield for what's right and just and for Israel, brazenly and with much courage, to Dalia Ziada and Rawan Uthman, who are voices in a hostile ocean that are able to stand their ground and go with what they believe in, to Shabbos Kastenbaum, who raises the flag against the Poison Ivy League. And of course, when we look at Masha, from delivering babies, she moved to delivering leaders, to stepping up to the plate and making a real difference in this world. Let us all embrace our destiny. I thought long and hard about what I want to tell you this morning, and there is so much I want to tell you. You give an Israeli the microphone, and I'm not off for 3 hours. I don't need anything more on. I'm good. I know. But mainly, I wanted to look back at the year and 3 months that we've had, and maybe think about the lessons that we've learned from our heroism, from your heroism, from the heroism on the battlefield, from what we've been able to experience and learn profoundly with lessons that have changed not just our lives, but our reality and the reality in this world forever. And this takes us again to Parshat Shmot, the theme of Exodus, let my people go. As tomorrow we are supposed, hopefully, to welcome the first 3 hostages who are coming back from the darkness of the city of evil and the tunnels of Hamas in Gaza. We need to remember that our hostages are not just 98. They are individuals. They are people, human beings, with a face, with a story, with a personality, with value. Remember them. Mention them. Remind them by name. I look at the youngest of our hostages, Kfir Bibas, who was taken at 9-month-old and happens to celebrate today his 2nd birthday. Today, January 18th, Kfir Bibas is 2. Not to celebrate even 1 birthday at home with his family. I look at the oldest of the hostages, Shlomo Mansour, who is 86 years old. Shlomo Mansour, who was taken so cruelly and violently from his home, humiliated in front of his wife on purpose by these Islamists. But Shlomo Mansour, who also survived the Farhud, the attack against Iraqi Jews in Baghdad in June of 1941, where according to his testimony, of hiding in the attic as a young child, he saw how the Islamists tormented the Jews of the Jewish neighborhoods in Baghdad and what they have done at the beginning of his life and towards the end of his life. He had to cope with the ramifications of the Islamists. Mention their name, remember them, remind them. You know, for many years as an Israeli diplomat, I was able to see the power of Israeli expertise and ingenuity, but mainly I have seen a nation with a heart. Gadi Moses, 80-year-old Gadi Moses, who is also one of our hostages, who is supposed to be released by the vile, filthy terrorist organization, Hamas. He is one of those experts who traveled the world to make people's lives better. He did not make billions out of that, I can assure you. Like I told you, the Israeli government does not pay. But he did it through the passion of his heart. And when asked why, they always say the same answer. This is our Zionism. Zionism, a word that Club Z has carried with such pride. Zionism, a word that some people shy away from. On a recent job interview with one of the leading Jewish organizations, somebody who was interviewed for the position was asked, what would you change? That individual said, I wouldn't say Zionism too much. It's a word that really alienates people. That is a profound misunderstanding of who we are. In the one and only organization in the Jewish world who has in its head a chief Zionist officer. Yeah, give her a round of applause. A chief Zionist officer. Do not belittle that word. Do not allow our enemies to reclaim our story, to own our words, to own our narrative. So we are with great hope, hoping to see our hostages released. And we remember that with all due respect to international diplomacy, can we move one? It's not just international diplomacy that brought them back. It's heroism. It's a nation of heroes. Heroes that not only are we never to forget, but we are always to remind and remember. Remember the stories of great inspiration. Infuse those stories into your lives. Read about them. Live the memory of these heroes. This is Guy Simchi of blessed memory. Guy was a soldier on leave who was dancing at the Nova Music Festival. As a child, he lived with his father, Dedi Simchi, in Kibbutz Re'im, which is in the area of the Nova party. So as soon as Hamas attacked, Guy knew what needed to be done, and he wasted not a minute. And he took as many friends as he could and ran in the direction of Kibbutz Re'im. When he got into the kibbutz, they went into a safe room. He told all of his friends to wait inside the room, closed the door, and stepped outside with no weapon, with no shirt, to defend them. One of his friends, Hadar, who was there, a soldier on leave who actually had his weapon there, said, I'm not letting you go on your own. I'm coming with you. So the two of them, with Hadar on the roof of the structure and Guy on the ground, fought off the terrorists who came to attack. Guy lost his life after struggling with bare hands against ultimate evil. Hadar survived, and so did over 20 of his friends who are hiding in the safe room. Remember our heroes. Remind our heroes. What great stories of inspiration have emanated from the people of Israel and the Jewish people. What great stories of passion, advocacy, and standing up for who you are. We could not be prouder of our younger generation, whether in the ranks of the Israel Defense Forces or right here in this room with each and every one of you who carry your pride, who carry your identity with such dignity and pride, who have a voice, who lead with confidence. We know there are many organizations out there who educate, but how many of them activate? How many of them actually are able to take that next step into creating another school assembly, moving with elected officials, demonstrating on a bridge or on the streets? This is who you are. Let's move on. This year has been an incredible year on so many levels. When the vile, despicable, now thankfully dead Yahya Sinwar, who was released from Israeli prison in exchange for Gilad Shalit, envisioned his journey and path of great massacre, death, and destruction, he was hoping for a changed Middle East. He was hoping for a convergence of the ring of fire created by the evil Islamic Republic of Iran to attack and destroy the one and only Jewish state. He was correct. The Middle East has been transformed forever, but thankfully in the opposite direction. We have seen a year in which the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces have decimated Hamas forces in the Gaza Strip in a way that Gaza has changed for many more decades to come. We have seen the narrative change. Because think about this, instead of being an aggressor, we look at the Israel Defense Forces not just an aggressor, but as a redeemer. It's the IDF soldiers who have changed realities on the ground. We cannot determine the fate of peoples, but we have given them an option. Through releasing Gaza from the hands of vile Hamas, there could be a chance for Palestinians to take a different path. Will they? I do not know. Can they? Only time will tell. When we look at Lebanon and the head of the Shiite axis, the Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, who seemed to be undefeated, unbeatable almost, was taken out by Israel, and suddenly Hezbollah itself was so weakened up to a point that in the last few weeks, Lebanon elected, in its stalemate of a political process, a president and a prime minister against the liking of Hezbollah. That could not have happened without the power of the Israel Defense Forces. We all remember 2020, the great explosion that rocked the Beirut port. We all looked at Beirut and the misery of Lebanese, but nobody could do anything. For Lebanon continued to be held under the stranglehold of evil Iran and the terrorist organization Hezbollah. Now, thanks to Israel and the Israel Defense Forces, the great redeemers, powers of the light and freedom, Lebanese may have a chance for actual sovereignty, to build a future for themselves. Will they seize it? We hope. But it's up to them, not up to us. And now all eyes are set on the great evil empire of the Middle East that has immiserated millions, not just across the region, but across the world. An entity so dedicated to hate and destruction that it defies the heart and the mind. The mullahs in Tehran who invested millions and millions in death and destruction through strengthening the evil terrorist networks in the Judea and Samaria and Gaza Strip, who immiserated hundreds of millions in Yemen, a country that is not even a country, through strengthening the vile Houthis, who have done what they did in Lebanon, whose arms are stretched all the way to the southern border here, active in South America in the drug and opium trade. That is exporting the revolution, according to the Iranian regime. And for the first time, this regime has been weakened, but our eyes are set. They're set far beyond Gaza. For are we about to see the great redemption of the Persian people? For the Islamic Republic has been at war not just with the free peoples of the world, not just with Israel or the West. It has been at war with its own people who are suffering under the boot of their cruelty and evil. May this be the year of their freedom. May this be the year of their release. May this be a year of a changed Middle East that will rise beyond the mountains of darkness and into a new season of light where Israel will continue to prosper and be a leading force for good, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. We have the power to make that change. If we learned one thing from the past year, it's the power of the one. Your power to make a difference. Guy's power to save so many souls, your power to influence so many people around you, changing hearts and minds through your activism, through your passion, through your devotion. A changed Middle East. I always think of the lessons that we've learned in the course of the last year. And I make myself remember and remind them every day. And the first lesson has been to us, believe them when they tell you who they are. We have heard what the Islamists, what Hamas has been saying, what Yasser Arafat was saying back before the Dark Ages in 1994. But we always told ourselves, they're just talking in Arabic to their own people. They don't really mean it. It's just politics that they're doing. But quickly enough, we learned that they mean what they say. Shortly before the attack that Hamas perpetrated against innocent people in towns and villages in the Israel envelope. I don't do Gaza envelope. Israel envelope. We knew what Hamas's plans were. And as time goes by, we will learn more and more of just how much we knew. As I always say, Israel had the intelligence, but we did not have the intelligence. Through its TV series, The Walls of Jericho, Hamas continued to say, this is what we're going to do. In a work done in Israeli intelligence army bases, one officer came up and said, pay attention, this is exactly what's going to happen and this is where it's going to happen from. But we didn't listen. We did not believe what they said. We were so taken by the misconception of our reality that we were shackled by it, unable to free ourselves, only 50 years after making the same mistake in the Yom Kippur War. That, my friends, should be the first and foremost lesson we must pay attention to. Believe them when they tell you who they are. Let's believe him. Can we play that video?
إسرائيل دولة لا مقام لها على أرضنا. إحنا الدولة لابد أن نزيلها لأنه بالفعل هي تعتبر كارثة أمنية وعسكرية وسياسية للأمة العربية والإسلامية، يجب أن تنتهي. لذلك احنا لا نخجل من نقول ذلك بكل قوة إنه إسرائيل لازم نأدبها وحنأدبها مرة ثانية وثالثة، ومش هذا حتكون طوفان الأقصى أول مرة، لا حتكون ثانية وثالثة ورابعة، لأنه احنا لدينا إصرار ولدينا قرار ولدينا إمكانيات أن نقاتل نعم. وأن نحارب، لكن كما قلت لك بدنا ندفع ثمن. نعم احنا مستعدين، معلش بدي أقول لك بشكل واضح، احنا اسمنا شعب الشهداء وبنفخر أن نقدم شهداء، احنا لا نريد أن نمس لا بالمدنيين ولا أن نلحق الأذى بهم، لكن أوقات لأنه في تعقيدات في الميدان صارت في منطقة موجودة وكان هناك في احتفال وكان في سكان وفي منطقة واسعة ليست سهلة على امتداد تقريبا 40 كيلومتر. يجب أن ننتهي.
أن ينتهي وين؟ بقطاع غزة.
So for those of us who doesn't understand Arabic, I'm just saying, in case you're not, between Rawan, Dalia, and myself, what we're seeing here is Ghazi Hamad, one of Vayal Hamas spokespeople, and what he's saying quite openly on that interview is we shall continue and always fight against Israel. And October 7th will be repeated again and again and again. So they're not shy about stating their position. This is who they are. And we must acknowledge it and be able to stand up to it as one of the major lessons of October 7th. Let's move on. Remember, remind. Remember the heroes of this past year. Stories that are in such abundance that make us so proud in who we are as a people. This is Ben Shimoni of blessed memory. Ben was also at the Nova party. When Ben found out what happened, he got into the car, took a few friends with him, and was able to drive out all the way to Beersheba, reunited with his family, dropped the people off, and he did a great thing, right? It's a hero. He's good. What more can you do? You saved people. Left them and drove straight back into the chaos to save another group of people. And you know what he did? He drove them out all the way to Beersheba. Saved them. That's great. That's amazing. You're incredible. It's an angel. It wasn't enough for Ben. He turned around and he drove back down. And he took a few more people. But the third time didn't work. That time, the terrorists caught them and killed him and those in the car with one of those people kidnapped into the Gaza Strip, Romi Gonen Leshen, who's hopefully going to be released in this current exchange deal with Vayal Hamas. That's Ben Shimoni. This is who we are as a people. This is who Ben was. Ben who came into the world after many years of infertility with his parents. Ben who was the prince of the family. Ben who is an angel, first on earth and now up high above. Let us remember Ben Shimoni and who he is. Remember and remind this year of heroism. Let's continue. We also remember the second important lesson of this year. What starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. And I want you to think about that lesson for a minute. Back in the mid-90s, I still remember the days when one Israeli would get stabbed and the entire country would be in uproar. A couple of years in the mid-90s, the same vile organization Hamas introduces us to a new reality. Now, we don't have to kill one Jew. We can kill dozens at a time. And they came up with what we have quickly learned to be. And as a teenager in Israel, watching this on TV, the suicide bombing attacks against Israelis. Going up on buses, coffee shops, shopping malls, killing 20, 30 at a time, injuring dozens more, perfecting the art of death, putting the iron bullets, the nails, to make sure that people suffer if they don't die. To go into the Sbarro pizza place in Jerusalem. To go into coffee shops targeting pregnant women. They have brought about rivers of blood that flowed through the streets of Israel. The same Hamas that we see today. It didn't take long for suicide attacks to present themselves in the West, in New York, in Lisbon, Paris, Madrid, and elsewhere. For what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews, and what starts with a Jewish state never ends with a Jewish state. Let us never forget and always, always remind. Now, we ask ourselves the same question. The so-called hostage deal, or I love how some of the outlets call it the prisoner exchange. What prisoner? Kfir Bibas? A baby prisoner? And what you are allowed to be done in Israel might very soon become a reality elsewhere. And if vile terrorist organizations like Hamas learn that this is the way to go, sadly, tragically, and hopefully not, we may see similar scenarios across the West. Make no mistake, what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. Let's continue. Bless you and bless us all. Remember and remind. Remember the everyday heroes. Shortly, on the night of the second Iranian attack against Israel, there was a terrorist attack when two Palestinians opened fire on the light rail in Tel Aviv, taking the lives of innocent people, killing them. They went to a mosque before to warn the people praying in the mosque not to come out. They wanted to make sure that they have a ticket to heaven. A ticket to heaven is if you kill a Jew, you're going to get there. That's what they truly believe in. This is who they are. Inbar Sege Vigdar, and this is her with her young son Ari, was on that light rail. The doors of the light rail opened. They came in. They saw her with a baby in the carriage, and they shot her at short range, executing her. She fell to the ground, protecting her baby. Ari was saved. Her husband, the Ari, was supposed to be the one picking up Ari that night, but he was at work, and as soon as he heard what happened, he ran to the scene. On some of the video footage from that day, you can see him running and hear, Inbar, Inbar, Inbar. When he got to the hospital, he was looking for Inbar, but he was fortunate enough to find Ari and to learn, sadly, tragically, that his wife was murdered. A lioness who protected her cub to the very last minute, going to the next world knowing that Ari is still there. And now Yari has to cope with life as a lone parent. But he's not alone. As an IDF reservist, he's surrounded by dozens of his friends of his unit who took upon the task of rearing Ari together. They are with him day and night to support him as one big family. For this is what we are, one big family. We are one big family in Israel. We are one big family here. We are one big family together. We stand together. We are united. We are as one. You know, I always repeat that story, that this war has changed us profoundly. When I just happened to be on an airplane at some point. It was right before Passover, and I'm sitting on the plane and wishing a friend of mine, Chag Sameach, Happy Pesach. And a young girl turns to me, she sat in front of me and said, you're Jewish. I said, I know I don't look it, but. And I said, yes. And you know what? That was enough. We spoke with our eyes. She knew what she was saying, and I knew what I was saying. We are one family. Remember, remind the incredible stories that have emanated and continue to come out as a result of this Iron Swords War. Our everyday heroes. Let's continue. The main lesson that I keep on repeating, and I urge for it to be consistent on our hearts and in our minds, is let this be an age of accountability. For once, you remember those days when we used to, Masha probably doesn't because she's never been like this, but do you remember those days when you complain but you do nothing? When you just like over Shabbat dinner, oh, that's terrible, oh, that's horrible, it really is very bad, and you carry on. Now we learned that we can afford to be quiet no more. So we've seen at the beginning of the war Jewish funders who pulled their funding out of the Poison Ivy League, saying that our money will not underwrite anti-Semitism and bullying against Jewish students. We will make our demand. You know why? Because we are proud, unapologetic Jews. I am proud to be Jewish, and if you do not stand up for me, then I will stand up to you. And we've seen funders pull their funding out. We have seen profound changes. Do you remember that lovely, lovely individual? The NYU Law Association student who 2 days after the massacre expressed solidarity with Hamas. I mean, think about this for a minute. What kind of a vile person should you be to march out on the streets and not call for the release of Kfir Bibas, of upholding the captivity of a baby? What kind of a creature can you be? Because you're not human if this is what you stand for. She paid the price. She was so surprised to find out that, hey, if I say something as vile as this, I lose my job offer. Guess what? It's a new world. Make sure that this continues to be the world, that they pay for what they say and what they do. This must be an age of accountability. Even on the diplomatic sphere, where UNRWA, one of my favorite organizations ever, in Hebrew translates to bad UN, and UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, that for years has perpetuated the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. The only refugee agency that makes sure that more and more refugees are added every year. Instead of reduction in the number of refugees, you have more. UNRWA, by the way, is not just an Israeli issue. Any decent human being will come up and ask, hey, how come there is one refugee agency in charge of Palestinians and another High Commission for Refugees that takes care of refugees from all over the world? That's discriminatory. That's not an Israeli talking point. That's a legitimate talking point that's got nothing to do with Israel or the Palestinians or the Arabs. Carry that point. Universalize the message. Now, Israel has officially, finally outlawed collaboration with UNRWA. This law is supposed to enter into force in a week and a half. UNRWA is afraid that it's going to lose its ability to influence hearts and minds. It's launched a campaign to continue working in Gaza. And the Israeli position has been very clear. You want to send aid to those who need it in Gaza? Do it. UNRWA will not be the tool to do so. Because you know what we found at the UNRWA schools? We found Mein Kampf in Arabic with highlights. And these are lessons learned in blood, because think to yourself for a minute, what causes a creature to cross the fence and enter into innocent people's homes and do what they did? What kind of education, what kind of indoctrination was poured into their hearts and the evil into their minds that made them behave the way they do, the way they did? That, my friends, is on them. Palestinians have a long way to go to release themselves, if they ever can, from these demons. But this is the direct result of education. That is your power. That is the power of the Club Z conference, to educate and to empower, to instill the right values, and to carry that message of the light into the halls of darkness, to awaken the human international universal conscience against those evils. Because remember, what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. And what starts with the Jewish state never ends there. Let's continue. So where do we I love that picture, by the way. You remember that? UNC Chapel Hill? Where? I love it. Is he? Okay, do what I do in media interviews. Go with it. That's my brother. Give him a round of applause. And you know what's beautiful about this? These are our brothers. This is the moment when the message became universal, when people understood that it's not just about Israel. People who undermine Israel, it's just for them the beginning. Remember small Satan, big Satan? I spoke at University of Tennessee a few weeks ago. And you know, I love our friends who come out and attack us from the left, whatever is left of the left. And they come up with their accusations, but I had a lovely new accusations, which we should also be ready for. Mr. Azani, they said, if only we stop arming Israel, if only we stopped our support for Israel, there will be much less hostility towards the United States in the Middle East. If only we stopped arming Israel, maybe Iran will not hate us so much. We have a chance to change reality. Now, you gotta love it, right? Now, think for yourself. We can do it in the workshop or the advocacy workshop of how do you cope, but you need to be aware of this misguided perception of reality out there. And that moment that was made clear when those enemies of Israel are enemies of freedom, enemies of the West, enemies of the light, enemies of humanity, is one of the views we must uphold and broadcast as high as wide as we can to make sure that that message is made clear. It's not just about us, it's about you. Israel is a bastion of freedom in an ocean of darkness and hostility that is holding up that tsunami on its way to you. Because what starts with us doesn't end with us. So now is our time, not to just feel it, but take action, stand up, hoist that flag, face those enemies. Be strong facing them, with faith, with passion, with confidence. They won't bring us down. You remember those days when we looked evil in the eye and looked away? Maybe thinking that if we only cover our eyes, evil doesn't exist. Well, guess what? Evil does exist. And it is up to us to stand up to that evil with bravery. Just like Olga said, that way history will judge us. Even if we lose a few friends along the way, we will gain a world entire. Now is our time, not for words only, but deeds. Education is important, but it's nothing if we don't act in accordance with these values, if we don't activate, if we don't stand up and speak our minds. And that's what I love the most about Club Z's work. The ability to create ambassadors and leaders who can stand up for yourselves. By the way, regardless of Israel or Zionism, on anything and everything, you are strong, confident members of society who will make a difference wherever you are. Coming out of high school, you will engage on college campuses and assume leadership positions from the outset because this is who you are. And that has been Masha's delivery over the past years. And here, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Club Z, we are here to uphold that legacy and continue to carry it forward, looking at each and every one of you and Club Z's alums making a difference as we go. Your brother. Let's move on. So this is how we end today. By understanding that you are those heroes. I still remember the condescending ways in which my generation spoke of your generation. Oh, the kids of today, they're screenagers. They scroll through, what was the application that was banned, doesn't exist anymore? Yeah. So how can you, tomorrow, I know, eager, excited. Now you know that your generation has exceeded ours. The generation of IDF heroes who ran into the battlefield, asked for nothing, jumped in their cars to fight, lost their lives without being called for it, and stood up to ultimate evil. You, my friends, who chose to spend this long weekend in this hotel room, empowering yourselves, inspiring yourselves to stand up and change the world. So today, on this Saturday morning, as we read Sefer Shmot, the book of Exodus, I tell you, when you leave this conference, you will be the Moses of your community. You will change hearts and minds all around you. You will be those people hoisting your community, your people's flag and banner up high, being able to stand up to all of the dark forces. Because if we learned one thing from history, it is that we persist and thrive and survive, and empires fall while the Jewish people continues to rise. So let this be the Club Z legacy and message. So today, I salute you all for being who you are, and I am honored to stand among you today and forever. Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Shahar. We really appreciate having you here. You know, we have to give a special shout out to Shahar. He always speaks so well about empowering Jewish teens and never fails to give some of the best keynote sessions here.
Thank you.
So you have the chance to ask
Yeah, questions.
questions.
They tell me
We
questions.
We can
Q&A.
take 2 questions.
Yeah,
right now.
20? Yes, questions.
Unfortunately not.
Anyone, feel free. I always say, don't be nice to me. I used to be an Israeli diplomat, so I'm good. Anyone. That's it, just go away. No, anyone. No? Yes. What do you want to ask? Who?
Yeah, I have a question right here. I was gonna ask, what was your most interesting experience being a diplomat?
Oh, what was my main interesting experience? Okay, so I'll tell you, we always talk about the power of the one, right, to make a difference. So I'm in Nairobi, and we're trying to, okay, this is off the record, right? So we're trying to make relations with a nearby country that is in turmoil, and I happen to meet a leader of that country. So he reaches out to me and says that they want to have diplomatic relations with Israel, so he wants me to come to that country for a meeting. And the idea was to smuggle me in the back of a truck so that we can get in and do it. And my favorite part was coming to our chief security officer at the embassy and tell him that that's what I'm going to do. And he was like, no, you're going nowhere. But we've been able to do incredible things under the radar. And there is so much that's being done that's not told, and that's for the best, away from the limelight, that we're really able to make a difference. So here I am as a junior diplomat in a remote embassy, really changing reality. And that to me is super exciting. It was coming to a remote Kenyan village and changing the lives of the surrounding villages through the Israeli ingenuity of water systems, and knowing that tomorrow and in the years to come, those communities will be better off because of Israel, because of Zionism, because of one junior diplomat. If this is the power of one person, imagine what your power is. Because you know social media. Yep. Yep, yes. What are my thoughts on the hostage deal? Well, actually, you know what? That's a great note to end. What are my thoughts on the hostage deal? My thoughts. So, I want to say that in brief, it's a necessary evil. We have to get our people out. In many ways, it's the most horrible, painful thing to do, because we have to look again at our failure on October 7th when we failed the Israel envelope. But I want to share with you just a quick story that was written by one of the IDF soldiers a couple of days ago and went viral on Israeli social media. Maybe before this crucial hostage deal, when we are all in such a terrible dilemma, here is a small story that tells us who we are. In June 2002, an armed terrorist crawled onto an IDF checkpoint and shot at the soldiers. When he first shot, we had a wounded soldier who fell among the rocks. I arrived as a local commander to the point of attack, and I exchanged fire along with other soldiers against the terrorist. We tried to get to the wounded IDF soldier, but he explained to me while we were fighting that we are unable to get there. And first, we have to take out the terrorist that was overlooking the wounded soldier, and only once we're able to take them out can we get the soldier. I thought that makes sense. I tried to get to the terrorist. It was completely dark, and the room was, the entire area was filled with rocks. The terrorist was jumping, firing, throwing grenades. We tried to attack several times. We injured the terrorist, but we weren't able to take him out. As we were trying to fight him, we had 3 more warriors injured, 2 of them in harsh condition. Then I commanded to stop the fire and tried to surprise the attack, but it's been already long minutes. And the soldier who was injured at the beginning continued to bleed. He stopped communicating with us. It was a tough decision, but I felt it's important to stick to it. We'll destroy the terrorist, and then we'll get the soldier out. Suddenly, one of the tiniest warriors in my group rose. So small. Corporal Guy. He ran out of the blue towards the wounded IDF soldier that was between us and the terrorist. He loaded him on his back. He used his other hand to fire at the terrorists, and he evacuated the wounded soldier. That soldier was taken in a chopper to the hospital. Guy saved his life. The doctor said that only 1 more minute, 2 more minutes, that soldier would have died. Minutes after, we stormed the terrorists and we killed him. At the end, I took Guy aside, who was just less than a year in the army. He was still overexcited, the adrenaline rush, and his clothes were drenched in the blood of the injured soldier. I asked him, Guy, why didn't you wait for us to kill the terrorists, to take out and evacuate the wounded IDF soldier? He looked me in the eye and said, sir, I understood that there was no time. We had to do it now. He's my friend. If I don't get to him, he's gonna die. You taught me we can't leave injured soldiers outside. I hugged him and I recommended him to receive a high decoration, and that was indeed granted to Guy. So tonight, before we make this hostage deal, remember, even though we haven't finished taking out the terrorists in Gaza, remember Guy, our hostages have no more time. We have to get them out, or it's their time. And I believe that as a country, we will go back and defeat to take out Hamas. Thank you so much.
Shahar. We really appreciate having you here. Thank you.